Discussion topic. Is BfA full of bad writing? No, it's not. Or at least, I don't think it is. So, let's start discussing it. First up, I'm going to give a little bit of context for this. Some people don't really know about the lore, or that there's a huge anti-lore sentiment in the WoW community. If you say anything negative about WoW lore, you'll get lots of praise and agreement. If you say anything positive, you get the opposite. It's popular to hate on WoW lore right now, even if people don't even know anything about it. So, let's go over misconceptions first, and then we'll talk about, what's so bad about it that everyone doesn't like. Because, I might say, I like it, there's lots of good things, but there's definitely some bad things in there. So I'm going to try my best to go over all of them. But I'm definitely going to miss some things, and which I'll probably discuss in the follow-up video when I do the comment response. So first up, we have two misconceptions. These are two very popular points that are brought up about why BfA is bad. And they're both just straight up wrong, and I see them a lot. So first up, Sylvanas burned the tree because she was mad. This is a very popular thing that goes out, where Sylvanas only burned down teldrassil because a night elf taunted her, and then she got mad, and she burned it down to spite this one, night elf. That's not what happened, but it definitely seems like that's what happened if only you watch, the Warbringers, because she basically talks to this girl, she tells her story, and then she says, I feel sorry for you, and then Sylvanas burns it down. What actually happens, if you read the short story, A Good War, which has that Warbringer part in it, Sylvanas had started the entire war, basically to kill the hope of the Night Elves. They are the Night Elves, right? I don't want to get them confused with the other ones. Hope or whatever, that kind of stupid... Oh wait, I can cuss on this channel. This channel's not monetized. Whatever, I'll try my best to not censor myself. Anyways, they did the war. Basically, their whole goal, because she had Sourfang plan the whole thing for her, was of course to go across Ashenvale, take Darkshore, and then occupy teldrassil and kill Malfurion. Those were their main goals right there. Kill Malfurion, occupy, and if they did that, the Alliance would be too afraid to attack them. They'd kill their hope, and blah blah blah. Eventually, things would work themselves out. But when Malfurion survived, they had him dead. They basically were just okay, Sourfang, go ahead and just finish him off. He's literally dying and dead. Just kill him, do whatever, and it's done. And we literally won, and we've accomplished all of our goals. And then Sourfang let him go. And that was a miracle, because there was no way he should have survived that. And this is basically what the Night Elf reminded Sylvanas, because Sylvanas was after Malfurion escaped, she was okay, well, that was partly my fault. I don't know why I trusted Sourfang to do that. Bad call, judgment call on my part, whatever. Let's just take this tree, occupy it, and then we'll plan stuff out later. And then she had a talk with the Night Elf, and then she's oh, that was actually a much bigger deal than I thought. We really screwed the pooch by letting Malfurion get away. That's going to give them hope. If Malfurion was able to escape from this impossible situation, then maybe they'll be able to take the tree back eventually, and that's just going to make them want to fight harder. Because the whole point was a demoralizing victory. Beat them so hard they won't want to fight back. Instead, this is doing the complete opposite. And she's well, damn, plan B. Let's burn the tree. That will teach him. It wasn't really a good idea. In my opinion, I don't really agree with the tree burning either. But the whole thing was the misconception that the only reason she burned the tree was to spite this one person, which isn't true at all. But it definitely seems that way if all you watch is the Warbringers thing and you don't really, read the other stuff about it. So that's misconception number one. Misconception number two, not as important, to be honest, but this is a very big misconception, is that the Nightborne only joined the Horde because Tyrande was rude to them. So Nightborne is a playable allied race on the Horde side, And both Alliance and Horde help them out, to liberate the whole Siramar raid. You do a whole bunch to help them, and in the end, they decide to join the Horde. And it's like, why would they do that? And it's like, well, because Tyrande was kind of rude to them and insinuated that, the new ruler, I forget her name, would be the next Alisande. And also suggested they should destroy the Nightwell. So, because Tyrande was rude to him, she decided to join the Horde. And that made no sense. That was stupid. They should have joined the Night Elves. That's not really what happened, but that is partly what happened. Sure, Tyrande was incredibly rude to them. That would be like going up to Lorthamar and being like, you are basically going to be the next Kael'thas, and you should destroy the Sunwell, because it brings nothing but trouble. Lorthamar would tell her to piss off, because that's a super rude thing to say. But also, it wasn't just the fact that Tyrande was rude to them, it was also the fact that the Blood Elves were incredibly nice to them. They helped them out the entire time, they sympathized with them. They're like, yeah, we have Withered too. If you play a Blood Elf and go to the Blood Elf starting zone, you literally encounter Withered people who have mana withdrawals from the Sunwell, because they basically went through the same thing. If anything, the Blood Elves and the Nightborne are more alike than the Nightborne and the Night Elves, because the Blood Elves were an ex-High Elven society portion of Night Elves, and so were the Nightborne. And the current Night Elves were all the lowbrow people, the people who worship Delune, the people who were practicing Druidism, because that was a brand new thing at the time. And then, once Queen Azshara did her thing, screwed everyone over, and then the Nightborne people left. It was basically just the Highborn people without Azshara, and then the everyone else. And they're like, you guys can't use magic anymore because Azshara, brought the Legion to Azeroth because of their overuse of the magics and stuff, especially arcane magic. And no, you can't use it. And then the High Elves were like, no, we want to use it. We're not going to stop. And okay, we're either going to kill you or we're going to have to exile you. And they're like, okay, I guess we're taking off. So they sailed across the sea, after the planet just got destroyed and split apart due to the Sundering. And in fact, their home city of Quel'Thalas. Thalas, I think, actually means sailing or something in Greek. Their whole city was founded because the Night Elves kicked them out because they wanted to keep using magic. And the Night Elves, are fine with magic now. In Cataclysm, they decided to let mages exist in Night Elf society again, which completely defeats the purpose of the Blood Elves. They don't really discuss that very much, but if anything, the Blood Elves have much more in common with the Nightborne than the Night Elves do. And the Blood Elves were also very friendly to them. They talked to him constantly. I think it's neutral stuff where you just see Liadrin talking to some of the Nightborne people, and they're just discussing things as the expansion progresses, past the Nighthold stuff. They set it up pretty well. It's just, if you don't pay attention to these kinds of things, you probably miss it. Or if you just don't know very much about their backstory, or, just don't know much about lore. That's usually where these misconceptions come from. You might think it's just Tyrande was rude to them for a 2-minute conversation, and that was it. They're joining the Horde now. It was no, it wasn't that. It's literally just they have much more in common with the Blood Elves, and they were a lot nicer to them, especially in their time of need. So it made more sense, gameplay wise. It was a way to give Horde members a night elf looking race. It all works out. They set it up very well. It's just a really big misconception because people don't read lore. But this is about it. That's where all the misconceptions end. So let's go on to the bad stuff. So what's so bad about BfA? Well, Sylvanas burning the tree was a pretty big one. The Darkshore reclamation storyline. So in patch 8.1, Tyrande got her revenge by turning into the Night Warrior and doing the ritual with a whole bunch of other Night Elves, and then they attacked Horde forces in Darkshore and took it back. And then they fought Nathanos and some of the Valkyrie, and they got away, but they killed one of the Valkyries. You know, a whole bunch of stuff happened, and no one really liked it, because it just, like, raised a whole bunch of, you know, like, why didn't you do this earlier? Why are they invoking this super powerful night ritual thing now, when they could have did it to, like, help with the Legion or other things? Like, why? The Night Elves were involved in so many wars, some of them way more important than taking back Darkshore. Why didn't they do that, you know, the Nightborne ritual then? Where did this thing come from? It's just out of nowhere. You know, it's actually just because it looks cool. It's just a cool way to, like, you know, give Night Elves a little bit of a cosmetic change or something. In lore, it doesn't make very much sense. And also, why was Nathanos able to fight, you know, a Nightborne tyrande and Malfurion by himself with just a couple of Valkyrie and, you know, the hero accompanying him? Nathanos isn't that strong. Like, on a power scale, Malfurion is like a one-man small army. It would take probably like 30 trained soldiers to take him down if they worked in a very coordinated effort. Oh, you know, like a raid. It would take like a raid group to take him down. And Nathanos, he's more like a 10-man raid. You know, they're not equal. And Tyrande is the same strength as Malfurion, basically. You know, especially with the Nightborne ritual. And then those two were fighting off, you know, much weaker people than them. And they were able to get away. That didn't really make any sense. She should have been much stronger than that. That whole storyline was just kind of dumb. But, you know, a little good thing about it, gameplay-wise, the zone looked amazing. And, you know, the whole Nightborne thing was cool for Night Elves. It wasn't really a good mark on their story. And also, Blizzard said that was them getting their revenge, which didn't go well with people either. Because that was kind of dumb. So, you know, we'll chalk that up as a bad. Not too many positives out of that. The next bad part of the story, or the writing, or the lore, why doesn't the Alliance just use the Vindicaar? It would solve so many of their problems. The Vindicaar is currently in, like, the Lightborn Draenei Control, or whatever they're called, who are currently allied with the Alliance. So they have, like, an orbital spaceship that can do orbital strikes from space, and that completely wins any battles or engagements. You can't really defend against that. I mean, you could in Warcraft terms, I guess. There are cities with gigantic magical barriers around them. But the Vindicaar, like, that is pure technological superiority, which would help them out so much, but they don't use it, and I don't think they really give a good reason for it. I seem to remember something about how it got injured, it got hurt. You can't hurt a spaceship. Something happened to it, like it broke a little bit after the whole thing with Argus. I don't think that's true though, because you use the Vindicaar to get back to Azeroth after the whole thing with Sargeras. It's there. It's, I don't know, probably something happened to it. Maybe sabotage Sylvanas. Maybe they'll explain it later. But currently, it's in working order, and it would be a huge asset to the Alliance. That's kind of just like a plot hole. You know, why don't they use the Vindicaar? Next up, we have Baine let Proudmore go, but was fine with teldrassil. This one gets mentioned a lot. Like, why were the Tauren okay with the burning of teldrassil, but, you know, drew the line when it came to trying to mind control Proudmore, which would have ended the war really quickly and saved a whole bunch more lives. That, you know, why? Exactly, that's a pretty good point. I don't think the Tauren were okay with teldrassil. You know, I'm pretty sure they were pretty pissed off about that. That's why in Before the Storm, Sylvanas made sure Baine didn't know about the attack, and, you know, that he was somewhere else. Baine found out anyway, because he has, like, spies. But he didn't find out till after the fact. He just knew that they were doing something. He didn't know that they were going after teldrassil. And I can't imagine he was very happy about what happened. But the fact of the matter is, he did help to fight with Lordran, and he did help all the way up until Proudmore. The whole thing with Derek, which is basically the same thing as giving support. And there isn't really anything in game talking about any kind of open dissent about what happened with teldrassil. So it's basically the same thing as supporting it. That's true. It's like, Baine, what's up with y'all? It's probably just because they wanted Baine to have a part in the story, and they needed him to do the Derek Proudmore thing because that's what they've written out. And, I don't know. There's definitely some things they could do to justify why he went along, but I don't think they did a really good job explaining it, and I think they just kind of hand-waved it and was like, it's fine, it's not that big a deal. And I kind of agree, it's not that big a deal. I can probably think of a whole bunch of reasons why he'd do it, and they don't really need to explain them all, but it definitely would help, and I can definitely see why this could be used as a point of a contention against the writing. So that's why I list it with the bad stuff. Next up, this is another one of the big ones. Character X is totally butchered. So we have a list of characters who have been completely ruined with BfA, and that's Lillian, Voss, Rexxar, Nathanos, Jaina, and Sylvanas. I guess some of these, they don't really fall under misconceptions, because, I don't know, I guess they would. Rexxar, yeah, I'll agree with that. He really shouldn't be helping out. The justifications they gave him in game was he had to finish his thing with the Proudmores, because Rexxar was like the one, along with Rokon and Chen, who went into Theramore and stopped Jaina's dad. They're the ones who basically killed him. So him being in Kul Tiras made sense, just not in the way they really used him, where he was the one leading attacks into them, and killing all of them. Like, he kind of left the Horde a long time ago, or went into isolation because he didn't agree with their warmongering under Garrosh, and I can't imagine he would agree with what Sylvanas is doing. Even if it does make sense for him to be in Kul Tiras, because of his involvement with the Proudmore family, it doesn't make that much sense for him to be so gung-ho. Well, he's not super gung-ho. He never gives like super support over Sylvanas' stuff. In fact, he's pretty apprehensive about a lot of the things he does, and questions them, but he still does them anyway. Which is definitely, kind of butchering his character. But they don't go completely a 180 on his character. He's doing things that he really shouldn't be doing them, but he's like gruffing the entire time and saying, ugh, this is a bad decision. The Horde is going in a bad way, or something like that. Lillian Voss, hers is a lot more like, you have to wait until later on to see what's really happened. She is very heavily implying that she's under a secret mission, and she's just kind of playing along because she is part of the Uncrowned along with Garona, the rogue order hall stuff. And she is acting in character with basically everything she's doing under the assumption that she's there as like a secret mission. Because if anyone knows Lillian Voss's character, it's me. I don't think anyone knows more about her than I do. And I played through all of the stuff she did, and nothing she did seemed out of character to me. Despite the fact that she is definitely listed as one of the characters, that has completely been butchered by the story. That one I just completely disagree with, because that's not true, but it could be. We don't actually know what the secret mission she's on is. She's just saying, like, we have to sit back and wait. And also, I've heard some people say that she was so gung-ho about raising dead people, when before she was all about killing necromancers. She wasn't very happy about raising anyone, and in fact, when someone asked her to be raised, she very strongly advised against it. She's like, no, you don't want to be raised. It's not great or anything. And then when they did raise people eventually anyway, because she was given a Valkyrie to raise some people, she basically helped them along. She's like, you're going to be raised. You're part of the plans we're doing. Let me help you as best as I can get used to this new life, because it was a very traumatic experience for me. Really calling back to the Undead starting zone where she ran away after seeing her reflection. I love what they're doing with Lillian. I just, kind of have to see what her secret plan is in the first place, because she's not her character doesn't really like raising new undead, but the way in which she's doing it in the story makes sense for her character. If they were going to make her go out and raise people's undead, the way they do it in BfA is probably how you'd go about doing it. I don't really have any complaints with that. Nathanos, he's basically doing the same thing he always has. You see, Nathanos used to be a fan favorite character, as surprising as that may be to hear, because I mained a hunter for years, so I knew like a lot of the hunter characters on the Horde side especially. So I knew Nathanos, and I was always a big fan of Nathanos because he was like one of the few major characters who was rude to your character. Like everyone else is, very happy to see you or excited. Nathanos is one of the few people who would openly like mock you or, talk shit about your character, and it was great. That's why people liked him. And then when he came to the forefront, and he was acting exactly the same, people didn't like that anymore. They thought it was annoying or whatever. And I was like, no, this is how he's always been. This is him being in character, and just people didn't know who he was, and then just this random super important guy came over, and he's just Sylvanas' boy toy, and he's always mean to people. And it's like, that just rubbed people the wrong way. They didn't like it. And I was like, no, this is great. I've always wanted him to be more involved in the story, and this is exactly how he would act. If anything, I love Nathanos and what he's doing, and that is a very unpopular opinion, but that's because I liked him before he became popular. And he's doing exactly what his character should be doing. There's nothing wrong with Nathanos right now. Also, speaking of Nathanos, the whole Darkshore thing, he's not that strong. Like, lore-wise, he shouldn't have been able to keep up with Tyrande or Malfurion. They should have murdered him there. That's not really a fault with his character, per se. It's more of a fault with, like, the power scaling of what they did with that zone. I wouldn't really blame that on Nathanos, and blame it more on the whole Darkshore storyline in general. Also, another reason people don't like Nathanos is because there's rumors that the dev or writer who like does the lines for Nathanos does fan fiction with Nathanos and pretends to be Nathanos on his Twitter. It's not a good idea to spread those rumors because some fans have taken it way too far and have I don't know what they did. They did something really bad to him to the point where if you mention Nathanos' writer on Reddit, on the WoW subreddit, they'll shadow ban your account because it was really bad and people were like brigading him or witch hunting. People were just being really, really nasty about it. So it's not a good idea to keep spreading those things because who cares if he likes to pretend to be Nathanos? The character himself, I think, is being exactly how his character should be doing it. He's following his pre-established lore pretty well. It's just people are too stupid to know what his pre-established lore was in the first place, or they just don't like his personality, but it's the same personality he's always had. If the writer for him thinks it's his fanfiction character, who cares? It hasn't impacted the story. And, you shouldn't send death threats or try doxing people over that kind of stuff. I also think it's really irresponsible when bigger YouTubers, perpetuate this rumor. I think I saw it on Belluar's video. He basically called out the guy as well. Saying Nathanos is basically a fanfiction character by the writer. I was like, ugh, don't say that. That's so irresponsible. You idiot. I keep saying it's a rumor. It's probably true, though. There's a reason people were super mad about it. I'm kind of going off of the assumption, even if it is true, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't really affect the character, and I don't understand why people are so mad about it. Who cares if someone likes to be cringy with one of the characters they like? So, on to the next one. Jaina. Jaina's character's butchered. That's not true at all. That's basically Jaina had the most character development of any character so far. Half of the expansion was about her. Mainly this comes down to the fact that she stormed the battle. She stormed the city of Darkshore and then killed the king and then took off and then was buddies with the Horde afterwards. After they went to go free Baine. And if anything, it seemed like a natural progression. It wasn't that sudden of a change. Like, when Baine brought Derek Proudmore to Jaina, she was super pissed that he dared talk to her. The only reason she even allowed Baine to come to her was, because they were already friendly in the past. They were on good terms. If you read the book, the one where Garrosh bombed her city, Baine basically warned her beforehand, before Garrosh was even going to attack the city. And she's like, thank you, Baine, I owe you a huge debt for this. That was why she was able to prepare a big defense and everything. Didn't really matter in the end, but Baine was looking out for her. And, this came to light in the trial in the book, what was the book? War Crimes, yeah. So they go back in time, they look at the warning, and Garrosh was at the trial as well, and he's like, you committed treason, you traitor. Garrosh wasn't happy about that. He literally, that was treason. He probably would have been killed if he had been found out about it. But, he wanted to warn Jaina because they were friends. And then he even knew he was going to get killed by Sylvanas for bringing Derek back. And that was a huge gesture for Jaina. So, of course, if anyone was from the Alliance was going to try to save Baine, it would be Jaina. And then after she met up with Thrall again, and Baine, she's like, you know what? Not all Horde members are bad. Some of them are probably like Baine and Thrall, and Sourfang to an extent, I guess. And Sourfang wasn't happy to see Jaina there too. In fact, he was like, oh, did you go to a city and kill a king recently? Oh, I love that part of the whole scenario. That was great. Sourfang, he's such a sassy character. Says all the right things. You just can't hate him, even if he's a big traitor. But yeah, Jaina's character is fine. I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't think that's a butchered character. And then we go over to Sylvanas. They've kind of taken her personality and just turned it up to 11. I think, her characters probably belongs in the misconceptions category as well. People think her character has been ruined. But really, they're doing everything that she's done before in the past. She's always been very conniving and doing morally evil things for a long time. It's just she's in the forefront now, and they've kind of turned it up to 11. She's still doing exactly what she's doing before, but she's doing just a lot more of it, and, basically kicking puppies and shit. They're making her a lot more blatantly evil, while also not explaining anything. That's done with the butchered characters part. I can't really think of any other ones that get, compared more than the 5 I listed. What was it? Lillian, Voss, Rexxar, Nathanos, Jaina, and Sylvanas. Basically, I'll agree, yeah, Rexxar shouldn't be there. Lillian, Voss, yeah, she shouldn't really be there, but they've given a good enough reason for her to be there. Nathanos is fine, Jaina is fine, and Sylvanas has been turned up to 11, which goes into the next bad. This is a completely separate point from characters X Butchered. What is Sylvanas' endgame? What the hell is she even doing? This is actually a bad part of the story, because it's tell us something, tell us anything. All they do is build up and build up. We're in the middle of the story right now. And of course people are saying it's going nowhere, or it's stupid, or it makes no sense. And that's because they haven't explained anything. We have no idea what she's doing. All she's doing is give a whole bunch of cryptic ass hints about things here and there. Things you have to discover for yourself by reading dialogues from people. And even then, we have no idea what the hell's going on, because none of it makes any sense. It's all cryptic as hell. Nathanos doesn't even know what the hell's going on. He's just we gotta trust in her plan. We don't know what the fuck the plan is, but, just trust in it because it's Sylvanas. That makes sense for Nathanos. Of course he would say that. That fits his character. That fits his pre-established character from before Warcraft began. Actually, I think he was created for Vanilla WoW. Now that I think about it. You know, I'm just trying to drive home the point that Nathanos is being consistent, and this is how his character has always been. Whatchamacallit. Yeah, so I think one of the bad things about the story at the moment is that Sylvanas has this huge endgame plan. You know, all these things happen. She's like, oh, it's part of the plan. And it's like, what the hell is your plan? We have no idea. You're doing all of these, like, really evil things, you know, which fit within her character, but she usually did those for, like, a reason we found out about immediately. Usually when she went around, you know, like, raising dead people, you'd be like, yeah, we literally need these people right now, otherwise we're gonna die. You know, we need these people, you know, so that we have an army for, you know, this other evil thing I'm doing. Or not even, you know, morally gray thing, I guess. She usually told us why we were doing everything. And in this whole storyline, we've just been kind of following her orders without knowing, like, what the point of it is. You know, why the hell is she doing all this stuff? And that is a big point of contention. And I think this is kind of the problem of the writing being a little bit too well done. You know, on the contrary, because in a good story, your opponent, not your opponent, your readers really shouldn't be able to guess the ending. And then when they get to the ending, it should be made obvious in hindsight. Like, oh, they did point to all this. Oh, and then you read back in the book and then you see everything. It's like, oh, okay, I see where this was going. Man, I had no idea, you know, this was going to happen. But man, that was a very satisfying conclusion. But in a progressive video game where the story is released, you know, like every 6 months, you know, that's like a year of not knowing what the ending to a story that is specifically about the ending. And of course, that's not going to seem good. You know, we don't know what the hell's going on, and they are not giving us a bone. Like, they're basically treating it like a book. You have to just wait for the payoff. And it's being built up so much that I just don't think anything they do can really satisfy the anticipation. Especially since the sentiment about WoW lore right now is overwhelmingly negative. So, I think that was kind of a fault of trying, you know, for writing, it's considered good writing if you don't make things obvious. Like, people have to find things out, you know, through hints and clues, through context stuff. What was it? Show, don't tell. You have to make them find things out for themselves. You know, don't be blatantly obvious. Don't do exposition dumps. All those things are like signs of bad writing. And that's kind of what people want. The writing is like it's too much like a book right now. And I guess that is because they hired on Christie Golden, the author. I will say, you know, as a little tangent, every book that she's written, that I've read of the Warcraft series, has been good. And not all the Warcraft books are good. Like, I've read some of them, and I quit halfway through because they were boring as hell. But none of the ones Christie Golden did. She's a good writer. So I kind of trust her to have something good going on here, since they hired her on to, like, write the story. And there's been lots of good little nuggets of story. But, like, yeah, this is, we need, like, throw us a bone. I need to know some kind of indication of what the hell's happening. Is it Old God related or what? Is she going full evil? I'll have some speculations at the end of the video, but that is definitely a point of contention, a bad thing, one that I'd probably agree with to an extent. Okay, and then final bad part, you know, then we'll go into the good stuff. My insert race here would never go along with Sylvanas. Actually, why is this part of the bad thing? This just seems like I don't know. I guess, you know, like my Tauren, my Orc, my Zandalari would never go along with Sylvanas. Here's just a little caveat about this. A little something about the Warcraft universe that doesn't really get explained through quests. Kind of have to read the books for this. Sylvanas actually has the support of the common people. They gave the credit of the defeat of the Legion to Sylvanas. Like, people think the reason they were able to beat the Legion was because of Sylvanas' leadership, which is huge. Like, that itself is A big thing when Sylvanas came back to Orgrimmar, they were throwing her a celebration, even though she specifically didn't, said like, don't do that, I don't want it, and they did it anyway because they loved her so much. And Baine even says this too, it's like, the people love you for, your defeat of the Legion. And they also praise her for finally taking Ashenvale and Darkshore. Or, they did before they took Darkshore back, but she, went through Ashenvale and Darkshore like a hot knife through butter. She just, went through it real fast, real quickly, took it all, and people liked that. They've been wanting Ashenvale for a long time. Because basically, the people of the Horde, or the ones who live in Kalimdor anyway, they live in a desert. They are very hard-pressed for supplies and food and stuff. And there's just this gigantic resource-filled zone right next to them that they're not allowed to touch because the Night Elves say they can't. So of course, they're going to be happy to finally have it. That's why Garrosh tried to take it, but he failed. And then Sylvanas took it real quickly. So they like her for that. They're not very happy about the burning, though. That's kind of like where the points of contention come in. And then some of the other things she does. But, the big major points is her defeating the Legion and taking Ashenvale. The common people really like her for that. And that's why when, Lorthamar, or, I don't know, someone says it in, one of the newish war campaign things. She says Sylvanas has the support of the people. I hope they follow me. And it's because that's true. They don't really talk about it very much. I think that's the only time they really mention that the common folk like Sylvanas. They don't really know about all these other interpersonal politics. They don't have 24-hour news channels talking about every little thing that their major leaders have done. They basically hear the highlights and that's it. And they go about to their business in their medieval times. I don't know, cleaning chamber pots while changing the electricity on their robot because technology in Warcraft is weird. And basically, Warcraft technology is just hand-waved. They have super advanced technology, and they only use it when it's convenient or when it's cool. That's basically just a part of Warcraft that just, no one really talks about. Because they don't really take it seriously in Warcraft. Unless they do. So, of the common folk and everything, there are a couple of races which would also side with Sylvanas. Obviously the Forsaken would side with her. Most of the goblins would. And I'd even say, most of the Blood Elves would as well. And that's just because of a completely different thing that I really don't want to get into because it's a really long thing. Basically, I remember one time I said in a video that goblins, undead, and the Blood Elves definitely support Sylvanas. And then I got a whole bunch of comments saying Blood Elves would never, and blah blah blah, I don't know anything about Blood Elves, basically comments. There were some good cases to be made, no need to be super dismissive about it. I just don't want to talk about it because it's really long. So I'm just going to go under the assumption that Blood Elves would join. There's lots of reasons for it, and I've also seen some legitimate arguments as to why that might not be the case. But as it stands now, in lore, it kind of points more towards my opinion that most of the Blood Elves are actually on Sylvanas' side, even if Lorthamar's defecting, and that's why Lorthamar himself was kind of concerned whether or not the Blood Elves would join him. If they're going to do a whole rebellion storyline, I would assume Blizzard would make them join him anyway. Despite how their character backstories are. Anyways, that's not really important. Let's go on to the good parts of the story. Because the first part of this was just nothing but bad stuff. And I'm really trying to speed through this because there's a lot. First up, we have, at the very beginning of the expansion, the whole G'huun storyline with Zul and Mother, and the Zandalar Forever scenario. All of that stuff was great. People loved it. I didn't really see any complaints about it. People liked the artificial created G'huun, Old God. People liked Uldir and the story in there. And Mother is a really wonderful new character they added. She's a robot who says robot things in response to human questions, and it's hilarious. And she helps out Magni. I loved all that stuff. And Gahoon was a very creepy looking, old god boss. He fit perfectly for that whole aesthetic and stuff. And then there's Bwomsamdi. Like, everybody loves Bwomsamdi. He's, one of the best parts of this expansion is just his character in general, and people loved every cinematic that he appeared in. And there's also the question of, who is Bwomsamdi working for? Like, we don't know that yet. The whole story with Bwomsamdi is still... oh, excuse me, my throat's starting to dry out. The whole thing with Bwomsamdi is still ongoing, and we also still don't know who he's working for. Because he says, uh-oh, the master's not going to like this. And it's like, who is Bwomsamdi working for? They don't really have any hints to it, but it's very interesting to see who it is. And then we have Vol'jin's Spirit quest. Who told him to make Sylvanas the war chief? That is a very interesting question that I'd like to know the answer to. And so do a lot of other people, but really is, a good question worthy of complimenting the story. I was like, yeah, I mean, sure, they're setting up a bunch of other things. Not everything they're setting up is frustrating, like, what the hell is Sylvanas' endgame? Some of the things they're setting up are actually, like, really interesting. It's like, ooh, I wonder, I speculate, this is exciting, I can't wait to see what happens. Who's Bwomsamdi working for? Who's told him to make Sylvanas war chief? Maybe it's all Inzoth? I don't know. You go like on a huge storyline with Vol'jin, asking literally everyone. I really love that quest, because you think like, who would be the one to whisper in Vol'jin's ear, to make Sylvanas war chief? It's like, well, there's only a handful of people who are very prevalent in, death and would be able to bring them back to life and stuff. I was like, there's no way they're going to ask all of them, though. And then you literally go out and ask all of them. And it's like, you ask the Lich King, you ask, like, the Valkyrie that Sylvanas tried to enslave, you ask Bwomsamdi, you literally go out and ask everyone that it could have been. Like, they didn't really leave anyone out. Besides people that were introduced in books that have never appeared in game yet. Because there is another Loa of Death, I think, or God of Death. I don't know, someone who appears in the Traveler books. They haven't really appeared in game yet, but I think they named them once or twice. They didn't ask them, but they asked all the major people that people knew about. And I thought that was great. That whole storyline was just, really excited to see what happens with that. And then we have Queen Azara. Queen Azara herself is a wonderful character. Everybody loves her. She's such a sassy bitch, just constantly talking shit every time you meet her. And just taunting you and be like, yeah, I could kill you guys whenever I want, but I'm not gonna. So here's a beanie, let's fight. Entertain me, please. And if you don't, whatever. And if you, do rude emotes at her, she, kills you, or... Well, she doesn't kill you anymore. She does a bunch of different debuffs. Azara's great. Her whole thing with releasing Inzoth is also great. Her whole master plan of using the Heart of Azeroth in order to unlock Inzoth Prison, that's great. There's not really too many complaints about this. I say this as someone who reads comments about lore all the time, keeps track of all these things, has a YouTube channel dedicated to World of Warcraft with a lore segment on it, who has a series of videos going over everything that happens in WoW for the past week. I'm very up to date on all of this stuff, and I read all the books, I read all the quest texts, I keep track of everything, and, the comments and that stuff too, and the overall opinion on everything Azara does, along with the Inzoth stuff, has been positive. The only big negative thing was that they were expecting more of Inzoth at the end of the cinematic. So, Queen Azara, great. People were happy to see that she didn't die. Which, is a good sign that you have a good villain right there. And then you have Saurfang's Rebellion, or the Sylvanas supporter options. That whole thing was great. I love going around betraying Sourfang every chance I get on my character. And of course, I have another character who goes along with Sourfang. That way I can see both sides of the story. Sourfang, even though I definitely like Sylvanas as a character, which is a topic for another video, I like Sourfang too. I'm interested to see where his story is going, because I think they've been doing a good job with it so far, even if he's definitely a traitor. But I really liked how he was sassy to Jaina in the scenario when they're saving Baine. He's like, you go into any cities and kill a king lately? That was great. I love how he totally brought that up. Jaina, not totally morally good, I guess, or maybe, I don't know, Alliance. Man, it's not really a good idea to call them Alliance players. Because you see, I play both sides. I mainly play Horde, but I wouldn't really identify as a Horde player because I think that's stupid. But I do play it up for videos. Because I like some of the Alliance characters too. I give a bunch of praise for Jaina. And I actually like Gen Greymane too. I like Sylvanas as a character, and Gen Greymane completely hates Sylvanas and everything about her. And I like Gen Greymane too. So, I like some of the Alliance characters as well. I'm not completely, just Horde focused. It's just, I think, since I play and interact with the Horde characters more often, I'm definitely more naturally inclined to liking them better. But I still, keep an open mind with the Alliance ones. And there are some good characters in there. And I don't know why I went into that. Oh, Sourfang's Rebellion. Yeah, that whole storyline, if you just follow Sourfang's side of the story, that's kind of like more of a, wow, I wonder how this is going to go down. That could be a point of contention. A bad one is Sylvanas, just Garrosh 2.0. That was another video I already did, so that's why I didn't include it in here. And then we have the Battle for Dazara lore. That whole thing, I thought, was great. Everything about it was so good, and I think the raid itself will probably go down as one of the best raids in history. In WoW's history, of course. Because the final boss fight with Jaina, it sounds cool on paper. You fight her on a boat, and then she freezes the water, and you go out and chase after her. And then it's also great in execution as well. And that's so rare, because it's kind of like Deathwing. The fight at Deathwing sounds great on paper. You chase him on a boat, and then you shoot him out of the sky, and then you jump on his back to pop his plates, and then you fight him in the ocean. That all sounds cool on paper, but in reality, it was kind of lame. Where it's, so I'm glad they nailed it with the Jaina fight. It's so good. And also, the whole way they were able to do the attack in the first place. They had bombs set from, I assume, the Alliance War campaign. I do know parts of it. I still don't know the whole story behind that. So when I found out, that they set bombs and they basically just blew everything up, and then they stormed the city, and I was like, oh, that's smart. Just set a bunch of bombs on them and then just blow them up as you sail into the city. And then they led a whole bunch of the forces away from it, in a completely different part of the zone, by just casting a gigantic illusion and then sending men literally on a suicide mission to make it seem like they're attacking over there. And then once they get to the heart of the army, it just all disappears. And it's like, oh shit, this was all a distraction. All those people who were fighting me were literally just on a suicide mission, and they knew it. And I was like, damn, I did not think the Alliance would do that. That's smart. Good on them. They totally deserve to get into the city and kill the king. And I also like, when you go to the king, depending if you're Alliance or Horde, you have two different dialogue options for how they interact with the king. If you're Horde, they're telling the story, and basically Gen Greymane comes up and he's like, surrender now, give us your daughter as a hostage, and we won't kill you, you stupid piece of garbage. But if you're an Alliance player and you do it, Gen is a lot more civil. He's like, there's no need for us to kill you, we don't want to, just give up, we're just trying to take your city. I love it. That whole thing is great. I love the whole storyline behind that and how it ends. with chasing Jaina out into the city, out into the water. All right, I had to like cough, drink some water. My throat's totally dried out, so I have a cough drop in my mouth right now. It's a little life hack for having to use a fake voice for extended periods of time. Cough drop really soothes my throat and allows me to talk more, but it's definitely going to sound like I have something in my mouth now. So, I'm sorry about that, but I want my throat to go out. So, where was I at? Oh, the battle for Dazar'alor. Oh, I already finished that. It's just great. And then we have, like, what is Inzoth's endgame? Like, we don't know anything about what Inzoth is planning. Kind of like Sylvanas. Maybe Inzoth and Sylvanas are tied together. Maybe they're planning together. Things are really pointing towards that. All of Inzoth's stuff has been pretty cool. Not as good as the other things I've been talking about so far, though. That's kind of like a, I am interested in what Inzoth's up to, but really not as much as all the other stuff. Now that I talk about all the other things first. So let's go on to other things. I still think the whole Inzoth storyline is a positive overall. Generally, people are pretty happy about the Void Lord stuff too. People aren't really bemoaning that. Their biggest complaints are really just with Sylvanas. And then we have the light on Draenor with Yrel. So if you do the allied race thing for the Draenor orcs, you go to the planet and you know that it's been taken over by the light. I'm not going to call her Light Hitler or something, because it's not. They don't go around, I don't know. Whenever someone turns evil, they usually just call them Hitler. And I don't think you should really do that unless the parallels, I don't know. I just don't like calling anything who turns evil Hitler, because that's kind of lazy. It doesn't really describe what she's doing very well either, because she's not that extreme, but she's definitely extreme, and that's great. And it's light-based. The light has been shown but nothing but good, and then here it is on a planet that's literally killing it, and they're converting people and killing them if they don't convert. I love that whole storyline, and I want to see what's going to happen with it, or if they'll just abandon it. I really hope they don't. But I don't really know how they're going to do it either. This is another one of those anticipations, but in a good way. I really want to see what happens, but it's not bugging me in the same way Sylvanas is. And there's also the quote, the light has struck a bargain with the enemy of all. I was what the hell does that mean? The enemy of all? You mean the Void Lords? The light has struck a bargain? That doesn't make any sense. They're fighting each other. They hate each other. They're complete opposites of each other. So it can't be the Void Lords. So who's this new enemy? And then there's also the hints at the Dragon Isles. They've been hinting this one pretty heavily. Showing Wrathion's agents in random places in the new patch. You just go up and talk to them, and they're hidden, and ooh, we're just, don't mind me. I'm just here being sneaky. You just kind of ignore them, and then there's a whole thing with the Heart of Azeroth stuff, where you talk to Caligos and the other dragon aspects. That's gonna be great. No, that's not the right word for it. I am excitedly anticipating what's happening with that. Those are all great setup points. All these things have been set up within BfA. So I think they count as good story points. Some of the story points have already been concluded, which were great, and then they're also setting up a lot of things, which are great. Currently, they could have very disappointing endings, which would make them really, I don't know, I can't really see how they'd mess it up that badly. For the most part, I trust them to do at least an okay job, even if they're not going to completely spectacularly amaze me. I can't really see them dropping the ball on all of these great plot points they've set up super hard, but I can totally see them dropping the ball on Sylvanas, because they just built that up too much without giving an inch. So they've been building up a lot of things, and not all the things they've been building up have been bad. A lot of them have actually been pretty interesting to see. So let's go on to like the speculation part. You know, like what might happen. And I saw this post on Reddit, which I thought was interesting. I don't think this is going to happen, but someone on Reddit said that the story of BfA is very similar to Bionicle, because in Bionicle, the planet they live on is like a living planet, and the planet was like dying or something, so they had to get the Mask of Light in order to heal it. And then they got the Mask of Light, you know, after a series of adventures. And then they had to take it to like the middle of the sea where the planet was the weakest. And when they got there, a whole bunch of, you know, like sea Bionicles got loose because they got like imprisoned there. And then they had to fight them. And after a long battle of fighting these like sea creatures, you know, like the Naga maybe, they finally get in there and they put the Mask of Light in there. And what happens is like the Mask of Light was actually created by the big bad guy, and it actually absorbed the soul of the planet, which left this planet like empty. So the bad guy took control of the planet, you know, and he won. He basically took control of the planet, and he was now the soul residing within their Bionicle planet. And then some stuff happened. The soul of the planet got sent into space, and then it got its own body, a different, you know, like planet body. And then it came down and fought, and it was like a planet versus planet. And then the original planet ended up winning by like throwing the bad guy into the moon. And that's Bionicle. So a lot of parallels so far. You know, Mask of Light, the Heart of Azeroth, taking it into the sea, taking it to Nazjatar, using the Heart of Azeroth in order to, you know, unlock a dark prison, you know, unlocking Inzoth's prison. So maybe Inzoth will take the soul of Azeroth and then take control of it. And then Azeroth will get like a different Titan body, and then they'll have a giant planet fight. And that will be the literal battle for Azeroth. Maybe, I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. The parallels were like very spot on. So, you know, Bionicle actually spoiled how Battle for Azeroth is going to end. Okay, so that's the end of this. Since this is a part 1, this is basically the discussion. I talked about a lot of things. If you wish to talk about any of these points for the comment response, or go over like major things that I missed, that's basically what this video is for. You know, like, put those down below. I'll read them, and then I'll go over them in the comment response. And also, like, here's a little thing about this video. I actually made it a few weeks ago, like this exact topic, and I went over it, and I basically just did it off the cuff like I always do. I had a few points written down, and at the end of the video, it was like an hour long, and I only talked about like 5 things. And I just rambled on, like, needlessly about stupid shit, and I didn't think it was a good video, so I scrapped it. And then I sat on it, and I actually, like, you know, went in and looked all this stuff up for this video. So, this is actually, like, my second try at doing this one, so hopefully I got everything this time. If not everything, most of the important stuff. So, looking forward to people telling me how wrong I am and how I shouldn't be enjoying the storyline. So, until the comment response video.